You would never step onto an airplane if you knew the pilot only passed a multiple choice test on aerodynamics.
Right. Absolutely not.
Yeah, and you wouldn't let a surgeon operate on you if their only qualification was watching some highly produced HR video module on anatomy.
No, that would be terrifying.
Exactly. Yet every single day, millions of us report to managers and executives whose entire leadership development consisted of, you know, just checking a few boxes on a digital portal.
It's wild when you actually think about it.
It really is. We accept this bizarre reality in the corporate world where competence is just, well, it's assumed simply because someone sat through a slideshow and signed a compliance form.
Yeah, but then the pressure mounts, right? And that illusion of competence just completely shatters.
Which is exactly why we're doing this deep dive today. Welcome, everyone. We are dedicating this entire discussion to one specific, incredibly powerful source, Chapter 12 of the book, The Competence Code.
And this chapter is such a vital text for anyone trying to build a resilient organization. Because, the book draws this really harsh line between performing in sterile, ideal conditions and actually leading in the messy, ambiguous real world.
Because almost anyone can look capable when a project follows the Gantt chart perfectly, right?
Exactly. True competence only reveals itself when the variables change, like when the client panics or when the budget gets slashed in half.
Yeah, that's when you see who's actually equipped to lead.
Hmm.
Our mission today is to map out exactly how that real competence evolves and how it can be intentionally developed, moving way beyond that surface level check-the-box training we just talked about.
Because the book argues that our standard approach, sending leaders to a 2-day offsite workshop and just hoping for the best, is fundamentally broken. It treats competence as this simple download of information.
Right. And early in the chapter, the book establishes this core equation to redefine what we are actually aiming for. It says that competence equals capability multiplied by character multiplied by intent.
And that multiplication part is key.
It is. It's a multiplication problem, meaning if any of those three variables is a 0, the total output is 0.
Yeah, you could possess world-class capability. Like, you could be the absolute smartest software engineer in the room.
But if your character is highly volatile, or your intent is purely self-serving,
You are fundamentally incompetent as a leader. It forces a complete paradigm shift.
Okay, let's unpack this, because I want to make sure we really grasp these three variables.
Sure. So capability is the hard skills, the strategic thinking. Character is how your behavioral choices, how you regulate your emotions under stress. And intent is the why.
The invisible engine driving the decisions.
Exactly. But here's the problem. Most corporate training budgets spend like 99% of their dollars on capability.
Oh, for sure. They teach you how to read a P&L statement or how to use the new CRM software.
Right. But they completely ignore character and intent. They just assume those are fixed traits you either have or you don't.
Which brings us to the mechanics of how a human being actually acquires those deeper traits. Because learning isn't just a one-size-fits-all concept, is it?
Not at all. And to explain this evolution, the book leans on Peter Senge's concept of the 3 learning loops.
Okay, yeah, let's get into the loops.
So it breaks down learning into stages, starting with single loop learning, which Senge defines as doing things right. And if we look at our equation, this maps directly to capability.
So it's about efficiency, basically.
Right. You look at a process, find the bottlenecks, and smooth them out. To put a concrete scenario to it, imagine a customer service team dealing with really high call volumes.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Single loop learning is teaching the reps a new keyboard shortcut so they can log tickets 5 seconds faster.
Oh, I see. So you are optimizing the existing system. You aren't questioning the system itself. You're just trying to execute it with fewer errors.
Precisely. But then we move to double loop learning, which shifts the goalpost from doing things right to doing the right thing.
Moving from efficiency to effectiveness.
Yes, and this maps to character. You are no longer just optimizing. You are reflecting.
So how does that look for our customer service reps?
Well, this is where you have to stop looking at the keyboard shortcuts and start looking at the data. A double loop realization would be noticing that, hey, 80% of our calls are complaints about this confusing billing interface.
Oh, wow. So instead of training the reps to log the complaints faster, you actually collaborate with the product team to redesign the bill.
Exactly. You stepped outside the immediate task and asked, is logging these calls even the correct action to take?
Which requires a behavioral shift. It requires the character to actually speak up, challenge the status quo, and collaborate across departments.
Right. It's a significant leap in cognitive load. But what's fascinating here is that the book pushes it even further with triple loop learning.
The deepest level.
Yeah. This is defined as how do we decide what is right? It correlates directly to intent. It's learning what to learn, questioning the foundational purpose of the organization.
I want to synthesize this for everyone listening because I loved the road trip analogy we talked about earlier.
Oh, yeah, that makes it very tangible. Go for it.
So, single loop learning is like tuning the engine of your car. You want maximum fuel efficiency, perfect tire pressure, you're doing things right.
Right. The capability of the car.
Yeah. Then, double loop learning is setting the destination. You could have a perfectly tuned engine, but if you're driving north toward a blizzard when you should be going south to the beach, your efficiency is entirely wasted.
You have to make sure you're steering toward the right goal, doing the right thing.
Exactly. And then triple loop learning is stopping the car, pulling over, and asking, wait, why are we even taking this road trip in the first place?
Is a road trip even the best way to achieve our purpose?
Right. Are we just driving because driving is what we've always done? You're auditing the underlying intent.
It's such a great analogy. But most companies just get stuck on that single loop. They train capability, but forget that a person has to actively learn competence.
But practically speaking, putting that into practice sounds like a logistical nightmare for a manager.
How so?
Well, how do you actually facilitate a triple loop environment without your team feeling like you are constantly having an existential crisis? I mean, if you question the foundational why every single morning, no actual work gets done.
That's a very fair point. And the book addresses this. It emphasizes that triple loop learning isn't a daily operational meeting. It's a strategic mechanism deployed at critical junctures.
Okay, so you build it into the calendar.
Right. Through practices like a pre-mortem before a major product launch. You gather the team and say, assume this launch failed completely. Why did it fail?
Oh, I love premortems. It forces the team to suspend their daily single loop tasks.
Exactly. You strip away the assumptions and audit the foundational strategy. But it requires immense psychological safety, where questioning the core objective is actually rewarded, not penalized.
Okay, so tuning the engine and auditing the destination makes sense in theory. But when a leader walks into the office on a Monday morning, they aren't working with cars.
No, they are working with stressed, occasionally stubborn humans.
Right, humans with established habits. So understanding Senja's loops is great, but how do you actually pull this off in the real world?
This leads directly into the second part of the chapter, where the competence code transitions into the mechanics of intervention. It introduces the COB model, specifically the behavior change wheel.
And this framework offers 9 distinct levers of change, right?
Yes. Think of them as a leader's toolkit for influencing observed behaviors.
But 9 levers feels overwhelming. A manager cannot pull 9 different psychological levers simultaneously.
And they shouldn't try to. Which is why the book prioritizes 3 specific levers for building deep competence. The first one is education.
Which goes beyond just handing out an employee handbook, I assume.
Way beyond. Education in this framework means expanding mental models. It's giving the team the comprehensive why and what behind a strategy.
So basically teaching the first loop, providing the intellectual scaffolding.
Exactly. The second prioritized lever is learning. Which sounds redundant, I know, until you look at how the model defines it.
Right, because education provides the theory, but learning provides the muscle memory.
Yes, this is where you use role plays, dry runs, and low-stake simulations. You are converting that cognitive understanding into physical or verbal ability, teaching the second loop.
And I think a classic failure mode in corporate environments is using the education lever when you actually need the learning lever.
Oh, it happens all the time.
Like a company will send an executive to a seminar on giving difficult feedback, that's education. But then the executive returns, sits down to fire an underperforming vendor, and completely panics.
Defaulting right back to passive-aggressive emails.
Exactly. Because they had the intellectual knowledge, but they never built the muscle memory through simulated learning. They never actually practiced the words out loud.
Which is why the third prioritized lever, modeling, is so critical. Modeling is the leader demonstrating the exact behaviors they expect from the team.
Teaching the third loop, intent through lived action.
Right. If you want your team to display emotional regulation under fire, you can't just educate them on it. You have to remain visibly calm yourself when, say, a client threatens to pull a massive contract.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though, because I want to play devil's advocate for a second.
Go for it.
I'm looking at the other 6 levers on the behavior change wheel, and 2 of them are coercion and restriction.
Yes, they are.
And the book seems to sideline these. But wait, isn't coercion or restricting choices sometimes necessary to maintain safety or compliance in a fast-moving company?
It's a great question.
Yeah.
And yes, it can build muscle memory.
Right. If I'm running a logistics company and I force my dispatch team to use a new routing software under threat of severe penalty, eventually it becomes second nature to them. I get incredibly fast at it. Isn't that an effective way to build competence?
It builds surface-level compliance,
Yeah.
not genuine competence. The book draws a very strict boundary here. Restriction and coercion absolutely have utility, but only in the context of immediate safety or strict legal compliance.
Just wearing a hard hat.
Exactly. If you operate a chemical refinery, you absolutely use restriction to prevent someone from opening a valve that will cause an explosion. You use coercion like wear your protective gear or you are terminated immediately to ensure physical survival.
But the cost of utilizing those levers for general management is steep.
The cost is trust and adaptability. If your dispatch team is only using the new routing software because they fear punishment, they haven't engaged those second or third learning loops.
They don't actually understand the value of the software.
Right. So the moment the threat is removed or the software throws an unexpected error, they will just abandon it or find a workaround. Coercion manages immediate behavior, but it completely starves the team of the critical thinking required to handle ambiguity.
Makes sense. So to build resilient competence, leaders have to rely on supportive and contextual levers instead.
Yes, like persuasion, which helps people internalize the belief behind a change, incentivization to align rewards, and environmental restructuring.
What does environmental restructuring actually look like in a standard office?
It's incredibly powerful because it shapes behavior without requiring a lecture. Say your goal is to increase double-loop collaboration between product designers and the sales team.
Okay.
You don't just send an email demanding more teamwork. You physically move their desks into the same pod. You change the architecture of their daily interactions.
Oh, wow. So you restructure the environment so that the easiest, most natural path forward is the new behavior you want to see.
Exactly. But there's a catch.
There's always a catch.
We can rearrange desks, optimize compensation plans, and run comprehensive training simulations all day long.
But we've all witnessed the manager who aces the emotional intelligence role play, passes every capability test, and then proceeds to scream at a junior analyst because a report was formatted incorrectly.
Exactly. You can pull every external lever on the COB wheel, but if a person's internal operating system is toxic, those external interventions simply bounce off.
Which brings us to the most fascinating part of the chapter. Because if you just pull external levers, nothing sticks if the internal mindset is broken.
You are hitting on the central pivot of Chapter 12. The book moves from the external environment into what it calls the inner world. And there's a defining premise here, a quote you really have to remember.
All behavior is belief made visible.
Yes, all behavior is belief made visible.
That is a completely different way of diagnosing performance issues.
Because it requires looking past the symptom. Competence lives in outward behavior, but it's fueled entirely by internal identity.
So, if an executive fundamentally believes that asking for help is a sign of intellectual weakness,
You can send them to 10 different workshops on collaborative leadership, and it won't change a thing. In a high-stakes moment, that deep-seated belief will override all the training.
they will just isolate themselves and try to solve the problem alone.
Exactly. So to uncover those beliefs, we have to navigate the blind spots every leader possesses.
And the book utilizes the Johari window framework to illustrate this, right?
It does. So we all have the open area, what we know about ourselves and what others see. We have the hidden area, the insecurities we keep secret.
But the danger zone for competence is the blind spot.
Right, the behaviors and impacts that everyone else on your team can see clearly, but you are completely oblivious to.
Like, a leader might perceive their rapid-fire questioning in a meeting as intellectual rigor and decisiveness. They genuinely intend to push the team to better outcomes.
But the team's lived experience is that the leader is a dictator who uses questions as weapons to humiliate people.
The intent just does not match the impact, and the Johari window highlights that you cannot shrink that blind spot by yourself. You require external data.
Which is why the book advocates so strongly for coaching. It describes great coaching brilliantly as therapy in a business suit.
I love that phrase, therapy in a business suit, because it isn't about giving advice on how to structure a spreadsheet.
No, it's about interrogating the assumptions and fears that drive those blind spots. And the book outlines specific diagnostic tools for this, starting with 360-degree feedback.
The ultimate mirror.
Yes. When executed correctly, It collects anonymized observations from your peers, your direct reports, and your superiors. It quantifies that gap between your self-perception and your actual footprint in the organization.
Alongside that, you have predisposition tools. These are the behavioral assessments that map your natural wiring.
They reveal your default settings, they show you where your natural strengths lie, and crucially, where your cognitive biases will likely push you when you're, sleep deprived and under pressure.
But my favorite tool mentioned has to be the business mirror.
Oh, the business mirrors are incredible. These are structured experiential simulations.
I like to compare them to a corporate escape room.
That's a perfect way to look at it, because they introduce variables that standard training lacks: ambiguity, time constraints, competing priorities.
Right, because anyone can sit calmly in a one-on-one performance review and give a perfectly crafted, polished answer about their commitment to cross-functional collaboration.
Easy to say when the stakes are zero.
But if you put that same executive in a simulated crisis, say, a simulated massive cybersecurity breach, where the clues are contradictory and the clock is ticking down, that polished facade cracks.
Their true character and intent just leak out.
Instantly, you see who hoards information, who snaps at their colleagues, and who actually steps back to facilitate the team.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the power of the business mirror is that it replicates the friction of the real world in a contained environment. But the execution requires immense care.
Because it could easily be perceived as a trap.
Absolutely. If leadership uses these tools to build a case for termination, the entire system fails. The psychological safety evaporates, and people will just try to game the simulation. These tools aren't meant to punish.
They are meant to create a shared conversation, which happens in the debrief, right? That's where the actual transformation happens.
Yes, that is the therapy in a business suit. The facilitator sits down with the executive and says, hey, in minute 14 of the simulation, you completely stopped listening to the engineering lead. Walk me through what you were feeling in that moment.
Approached with deep curiosity and empathy, not judgment.
Exactly. The goal is to help the individual connect their visible behavior back to their invisible beliefs, engaging that vital triple-loop learning.
Bringing all of this into reality requires a staggering amount of vulnerability. I mean, we are talking about deep psychological audits, dismantling deeply held beliefs, confronting our own blind spots.
It's heavy, uncomfortable work.
So it raises the ultimate question. If a department is struggling with competence, and this methodology is the solution who has to endure this process first, is it the underperforming team or is it the manager?
The competence code is uncompromising on this point. It states unequivocally that leadership is not about knowing more. It is about becoming more.
Becoming more.
Yes. You cannot build a high-performing, deeply competent team if you, as this raises an important question you have to ask yourself. Are there competing intentions within you that you need to reconcile? Are you genuinely committed to the friction of development, or are you just going through the motions looking for a new framework to make your team work harder?
Because the team will always detect the difference. You cannot fake your intent.
Every initiative to build competence lives or dies based on the authenticity of the person leading it.
Well, this journey through Chapter 12 really forces us to completely reevaluate our definition of a capable workforce.
It truly does.
We explored Senja's 3 loops of learning, moving from optimizing the task to questioning the goal to auditing the foundational purpose.
We unpacked the behavior change wheel, seeing how education, learning, and modeling are the true instruments of change, while coercion merely rents compliance.
And we waded into the inner world, using the Johari window and business mirrors to expose the hidden beliefs that dictate our actions, landing on that inescapable truth that organizational change requires personal transformation from the top down.
It always starts with the leader.
It does. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. But before we go, we want to leave you with a final thought to explore on your own.
Yes. As you look at the ecosystem of your own team tomorrow morning, keep the book's central premise in mind. All behavior is belief made visible.
Such a powerful lens.
So look at the most frustrating, counterproductive behavior occurring on your team right now. Instead of asking how to fix them, look inward. What unspoken belief are you modeling day in and day out that makes your team believe that behavior is perfectly acceptable?